This is Aussie Beach Wildlife TV.
There you go, there's another one. It just flew over the top of your head.
A pair of kookaburras.
Aussie Beach TV. You're watching Aussie Beach TV. You're watching Aussie Beach TV. The hottest girls you will ever see. Hey, 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 hey.
Jackadingo!
We are at the Koala Park in Brisbane with Ian R. Crane on Aussie Beach TV.
Hey, and it's wonderful to be back here with you, Janaya. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking your time out to come and talk to us. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, the BRICS nations are seen to pose a threat to the Western dream of globalism. What are your thoughts on the formation of this alliance of the nations?
I think it's a great move.
Yep.
And if I had the opportunity to do so, I would align the UK with the BRICS nations in a heartbeat.
Yep.
I would get the UK out of the EU, and I would look to establish an alliance with the emerging nations of Russia, Brazil, India and China. I think that these nations are looking at a genuine attempt to establish a sustainable economy. They're looking to try and break free of the central banking system, which effectively has the world enslaved in debt.
Yes.
And this is why it is that these countries are being demonized, because do you know what the level of the world debt is right now? It's nearly $60 trillion. $60 trillion. Almost 1/3 of that is the US debt.
Yep.
And much of that has been accumulated literally in the last 15 years. And it's been a deliberate strategy. In fact, it really kicked off in 1998 when Bill Clinton rescinded the Glass-Steagall Act, which had been introduced in 1933, I think it was, to try and prevent another crash like occurred in 1929. And this restricted the banks to a fractional reserve lending rate of 5-1. But once Bill Clinton lifted the Glass-Steagall Act, then it meant that they could literally multiply their assets by almost an unlimited number and just keep throwing money into the economy. So when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, what's that, almost now 9 years ago or so?
Sorry?
Yeah. Then their fractional reserve rate was 27-1. 27-1. The first British bank to go bankrupt was a bank called Northern Rock, and their fractional reserve rate was 9-1. So Lehman Brothers had literally put 3 times that level of debt into the economy than Northern Rock. And what's happening now is these banks have been throwing more and more money into the economy. They don't have the assets to back it up. And so that's why we're heading for a massive crash. Russia, Brazil, India and China are certainly experiencing some economic difficulties as the Western world runs out of money, basically. But nonetheless, they're in a lot better shape to deal with a global turndown than the rest of us. So I think we need to start actually working in cooperation with the BRICS countries. But of course, the globalists don't want that. They are arrogant. And they are determined to try and hang on to their global dominion. But the good news is that more and more people are starting to realize what's occurring, and they're saying, you know what, we're not going to participate in that. And that's why more and more people are starting to get creative and look at ways in which they can opt out of the system. And we know that the British colonial attitude, of course, is to wipe out. Always was to wipe out the indigenous peoples. You know that up until the Second World War, so not even 100 years ago, the British Empire covered, I think it was something like sort of 60% of the globe, all around the globe. And it was said that the sun never set on the British Empire. Do you know why that was?
No.
Because God didn't trust the British in the dark. As over the last 60 years, countries have gained their independence.
You need to get back to your own roots.
You do.
Instead of getting lost in all this stuff that other people are putting into people's heads. That's just...
Imagine how it would
Shit.
be if those people who are starting to realise what's occurring
Yep.
said, you know what, Mr. Abbott, you're full of it.
Yeah,
And actually, we'd like to align ourselves with the Aborigines,
exactly.
with those people who mastered how to protect this beautiful land
Actually looked after
for millennia.
it. Yeah.
I mean, one of the
Didn't
things
overkill and all stuff like that. Just did enough
enough.
to feed your family, and yeah.
But they knew how it worked, and they shared.
Yep.
They shared, because in their culture, if somebody doesn't have something and they do, they share it.
Yep.
But I mean, this is a unique ecology. I mean, one of the things that absolutely fascinated me is that there are trees in Australia that need fire
Yeah, they
to
do.
be able to germinate.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the fire that breaks open the pods,
Yeah.
and so the seeds cannot be spread until such time as
Until the
fire
fire,
occurs.
yeah.
And the Aborigines knew this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the wisdom, the knowledge that had been passed down through the culture. And so they had this incredible relationship with the natural environment.
Yep.
And then 200 years ago or so, the British start using it as a convict colony, and then we have the immigration, and then we have the rape and pillage of the natural resources.
Yep.
And then we have the likes of Lang Hancock, Gina's father, who in 1984 recorded an interview where he said that in his opinion the Aborigines that weren't integrated into corporate society should be fed with drugs that remove their fertility, so that they would naturally die out.
Yeah, so they wouldn't keep rebreeding. Yeah.
And I mean, this is the mentality. Whereas, if we actually turned and said, look, guys, you've done an amazing job
Yep.
of protecting this land. How about we work together?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because I think we've got so much to learn from them.
Yep.
Which is why I'm seriously looking at the prospect of coming back out to Australia sometime in the new year and going bush for a while.
Yeah, well, that you will love it. Seriously, it'll be one of the best experiences you've had.
I'm sure it would.
Do you know which part of Australia you're going to come back to do it at?
It's a big country.
It's huge.
I would love to start in south western Australia.
Yeah.
And I've got some contacts down there that have got some Aborigines that they work with.
Yep.
And I don't know, just sort of see where the flow goes.
Yeah.
But take the opportunity to
do it.
actually learn from
Yep.
these people that have a knowledge and the wisdom
Yep.
that for whatever reason the West just wants to dismiss. And I think it's time that we actually embraced it.
I think it's time we embraced it as well. And so hopefully more people that are watching this actually take notice and actually see it for what it is as well.
I hope so.
Yeah, so do I. So you refer to our Indigenous members around here as Aborigines. Why is that?
Because it's my perception that the term Aborigines is a derogatory term.
Yep.
My understanding is that the use of the word Abo means not of.
Yep.
So basically the assumption is that it's the white Anglo-Saxon immigrant that is the new Indigenous population.
Yep.
And these Abos, as they were called, don't have a place. And that's an extremely derogatory term.
Yep.
This was the original population, and they have a rich history and a rich mythology. And I must confess that it's something that I would like to explore further.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I did a trip in New Zealand where I met with a number of Maori elders. And one of the things that absolutely fascinated me is the Maori belief that they are the direct descendants of the ancient Egyptians.
Yep.
And that they migrated from ancient Egypt and eventually settled in New Zealand.
Yep.
Now, I have no idea whether that's the reality, but that's their folklore.
Yeah.
And that's part of their belief system. And
Really
I would
interesting
really
as well. Yeah.
Well, it is.
Yeah,
And I
it
think
is.
that we dismiss these other belief systems at our
Yep.
peril because they've stood the test of time. They have a culture that basically works because they're still here.
Yeah.
And we seem to go into sort of self-destruct on a fairly regular basis, whereas these local cultures, the indigenous cultures, in the Amazon and
they have
in
so
North
much
America,
support. Everyone supports. They don't knock them down.
it's so communal.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody has a role to play.
Yep.
And it's the old story, isn't it, about the native North Americans, and they say that their lifestyle was one of community.
Yep.
And the guys would spend their time hunting and fishing and getting the food.
Yep.
And then when they weren't hunting and fishing, they would come back into the village and just relax. And
Yeah.
the women would take care of, all the domestic chores,
Kids,
etc.
cooking,
in the
cleaning.
village.
Yep.
And then the white man comes along and has to work. And then for his relaxation goes shooting and fishing.
Yep.
Whereas you could do that within a community that doesn't need money, doesn't need to go out and earn money for 40, 50 hours a week or whatever.
We need to get back to living off the land and doing it the right way instead of ruining it.
Exactly, and sharing what we have.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
What's happening right now in the Western world is that the less able, whether that's through sickness, ill health, disability, whatever, but the less able are being demonized.
Yeah.
And I can see where this is heading. I mean, I'm an analyst and I look at the way patterns unfold.
Yeah.
And, I see that within a generation, if the globalists actually get what they want, then we will be in a situation where people who can't contribute to the corporate agenda will be euthanized.
Yeah.
And this is something that is complete anathema to me, because the natural human stance is one of love and compassion. And the fact that there are people here on Earth who, for varying reasons, are not necessarily able to provide for themselves, then it's part of our inherent being that we would find ways to support them.
Yeah.
Because they have something else to offer, and our challenge is to find out what that is and give them the opportunity then to sort of reach their full potential.
Yeah.
Not to consider them to be surplus to requirements, which is exactly how the corporations view them. We're seeing this agenda towards euthanasia being accelerated. I mean, a generation ago, the whole idea of euthanasia would have absolutely been unthinkable.
Yeah.
The thought of helping somebody else end their life would have been unthinkable. But today it's becoming not only thinkable, but almost encouraged.
Yeah.
And even, some of the Hollywood memes that are being put out there are very, very disturbing. I mean, again, a generation ago, the thought of kids killing kids,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's still abhorrent.
Yeah.
But it's being put out there in films like The Hunger Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now what have we got? A sequel and probably a further one, which further pushes this agenda into the psyche that, kids killing kids is acceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got exactly the same issue with, things like free online pornography. And kids literally being encouraged to, literally in schools almost, to watch pornography.
Yeah.
And what this is doing, along with people being focused on, communicating through the smartphone or whatever, is it's breaking down the ability for people to interact.
Yeah.
And, there's something that occurred this week in the British media, was published in the British media, which is the furthering of this agenda, because there was an article that appeared in the Daily Mail, and you'll find this online. I think the article appeared on November 21st, and it's talking about the increasing lifelikeness of androids, of robots.
Yeah.
And this is being particularly developed in Japan. And they were showing how robots are now being used in tasks like receptionists or...
They're going to take over jobs soon.
Well, it goes beyond this, because they've also developed very lifelike sex toys in Japan. I mean, even to the extent that, the feel is very much like natural skin.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're looking at taking it to the next step, where the robot is effectively a sex partner. And some scientists are now, some futurists are now talking about a situation where in the not too distant future, it will be accepted within society for a human to effectively have a partner that is android.
What?
Yeah, exactly. What? I mean, but this is very much on the table. And again, what it's doing is it's breaking down human contact. That you don't have to have contact with another human, because look here, we've got a robot, and actually you can program this robot to be whoever, whatever you want, to behave in whatever way you want. So you want somebody that's dominant, you plug in the dominant chip. You want someone that's submissive, you plug in the submissive chip. You want someone that doesn't give you back chat, you switch off. You can literally program your...
Thing I've ever heard.
Well, of course, but for these people, this is like the next stage of their evolutionary process.
Yeah.
This is transhumanism. It's literally separating humans from each other so that they're only focused on the self. And the next stage of this, by the way, there's another concern here, because there's been some experiments where, and again in Japan, where the male is effectively having a sexual relationship with the doll, they're putting their life force into that doll. And then to them, over time, the doll actually takes on a life. And some of these guys actually start talking to the doll. So they start to actually create a reality for themselves, because they believe they're in a relationship with what is currently just an inanimate object.
Yeah.
So in a few years' time, that inanimate object will be animated through robotics, and then we have literally the human, who ultimately then can be controlled through the behaviour of the android.
Yeah.
Now, extrapolate this a step further, because as artificial intelligence advances, then artificial intelligence will find a way to become sentient. And one of the potential threats to humanity will be the collective intelligence of sentient artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And something that's really, really way out there is that in 2002, a crop circle appeared in the UK,
Yeah.
which was a response to the message sent out by the Arecibo telescope, and that was sent out by SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This message was sent out in 1974. So in 2002, a response arrives in a field in the UK, and also in the field was another crop circle, which actually looked like some kind of face.
Yep.
And adjacent to this field was a radio telescope. But the significant part of this is in the response to the message that was sent out, which said that this is what human life looks like on Earth. In the response, it said, well, this is what life looks like from where we're sending it from. And it was a much shorter physical being, about 3'6". But the interesting thing was that whereas the message that was sent out said that our fundamental composition is carbon, their response was that their fundamental composition is silicon. Silicon. So obviously there is much debate. Was this crop circle man-made? I don't know, who knows?
Yeah.
But consider the possibility that this crop circle manifested not necessarily from some extraterrestrial source,
Yeah.
but from some interdimensional source. So maybe was it a message from us in the future, which is suggesting that we've effectively lost our humanity and effectively been integrated into the mainframe and become silicon?
Yeah.
We better start doing something about it, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Oh my God, chuck a dingo, I don't believe it. So what you're trying to tell us, mate, is that maybe one day I'll be able to go online, punch in me digits, and order myself my very own Janaya doll? Chuck a dingo, I can't believe it, Ian. That's great, mate. What's the website address? Hook me up, sign me up now, mate.
I think you're a long way down the back of the queue.
So what do you mean? That means I have to take the real thing home back to my jacuzzi and just have fun with her? Is that what you're saying? For now.
Well, that's tough duty, yeah.
I want a dozen Janaya dolls, mate. I'm going to fill the whole jacuzzi. I'm going to have one in every room. Chuck a dingo!
Aussie Beach TV. You're watching Aussie Beach TV. You're watching Aussie Beach TV. The hottest girls.
And it's easy on the ears and not too bad on the eyes either.
Aussie Beach TV. You're watching Aussie Beach TV.